Hello, everybody, and welcome to our series Kickstarting Kasten. Happy Boxing Day. I'm wearing this hat. I got it as a present. It's so that I don't always wear swag. Um, so I got this special hat when it gets chilly in here. There's actually a massive blizzard outside. So maybe I'll take some photos in the massive blizzard later and then post them. Of course, I am wearing some swag. I've got this Object First R&D shirt. Now you say, Jeff, how do you get an R&D hoodie because you're not in R&D? Well, it's very simple. There was a get together, and one of the R&D guys went to the washroom, and he left this. And I thought, well, it was a bit chilly. Maybe I'll just borrow it temporarily. And then I left, right? No, I'm joking. Uh, they gave this to me because I helped them out with Kasten, right? And so that's why you need to learn Kasten. The R&D teams will give you a T-shirt for doing their job for them. Isn't that wonderful? No, I'm not. I'm joking. I didn't do their job. I just did some extra testing, which was fun. Okay, but I got the swag, and it's pretty comfortable. Okay, so first I want to point out one thing. Where are these things being posted? They're on YouTube, these videos, but they're also in the Kubernetes corner. And this is where eventually I will post all the instructions. Okay, there'll be a post with all the instructions. Excuse me, it's freezing. You got a wind coming in. It's wonderful winter weather. So this is where all of the instructions will be posted eventually. Right now, we've got part 5 in there, and we're doing part 6 today. Okay, reminder. What did we do yesterday? Yesterday we installed Kasten, but we just left up the login screen here, and we're using token authentication, remember? So what do we need to do? We need to get a token. Now, it used to be that Kasten came installed with a default service account, which you could then get a token for. They removed that for security reasons, so now we have to do a couple things. Remember, there's authentication and there's authorization. So authentication is getting in, and authorization is what you're allowed to do, okay? So we're going to talk today about both things, and we're going to go forward now and create a service account, and then we're going to give that service account the rights we need. In this case, I'm going to give it all the rights because it's a demo, but you can give different service accounts or even users if you're in a distribution like OpenShift or Harvester, different rights. And in fact, you can actually do that in the web UI as well. So I'll show you that right now as well. So I'm going to create a service account, and I'm going to call it Kasten root. This is just so that I'm only creating one, but I'm going to give it full power, so I'm calling it Kasten root. So we have to create the service account, and then we have to add it to certain already pre-set up by Kasten cluster role, a role for the namespace, and also a special role for the virtual machine. So this is a big topic in Kubernetes, so we can't really dive too deep in it, but you can have cluster roles, which work for the entire Kubernetes cluster and get various permissions on what to do. And the permissions, what you're allowed to do are called verbs. Okay, it's a bit of a deep dive, not a deep dive, putting our toe into RBAC. We're not going to deep dive into it. But you can also have namespace roles as well. And there's a namespace role for Kasten as well, an admin role, and there's a special virtual machine role. So if you don't give the service account or the user the virtual machine role, you won't see the virtual machines. So we want to do all that. So let's do this. Let's bring up our command line. Okay, there's our command line, and we're in the machine. So what first do I need to do? I need to create a service account in the Kasten namespace. Okay, so I'm going to do that, and I'm going to call it Kasten root. Okay, so K create SA service account. Again, I don't like to type. And I'm calling it Kasten root in the namespace. And there it's created. Fine, I can get it. Okay, get SA in namespace Kasten root. And there's a whole bunch of them there by default. But this is the one I just created somewhere. Where is it? There it is, Kasten root. See? 6 seconds ago. The other one's 24 hours. That's when we did our installation. Okay, the first role that I want to connect it to is called it's the namespace role called admin. Okay, it's the admin role. And in RBAC of Kubernetes, there are roles, and then you connect the service accounts to the roles through role bindings, okay? Or cluster role bindings, depending on what role it is. Is it a cluster role or is it just a normal role, which means it's in a namespace? So in this case, we're going to connect this service account to the local namespace role, right? Called admin, or NSAdmin, K10 NSAdmin, I think I call it. Right, okay. So there's the command right there. So kubectl, I just copied this paste from the instructions. I could do K if I wanted to. Create role binding. So not a cluster role binding in this case, because it's just for this namespace role, Kasten root binding, okay? That's what I called it, so I know what it's linked to if I need to delete it. The role, so not a cluster role, this is just a role called the K10NS admin, which I assume stands for K10 namespace admin. Namespace is Kasten.io, and the service account is the one I just created, Kasten root. So we'll do that, and it should say created. That's the first thing we do. Next, we want to link it to a cluster role, okay? So it can do everything in the cluster, which it needs to do if we want to see everything, okay? So there is a special role in Kasten, and we'll put that in here as well, and it's called the K10 admin, okay? As you can see, cluster role. So let's go through this command. kubectl or kubectl, or just K if I want to be lazy, create cluster role binding, okay? The one before that was a role binding. This is a cluster role binding, so much more powerful for the entire cluster. And I'm calling this Kasten root K10 cluster binding, so I can figure it out, because there are a lot of cluster binding, cluster roles. Cluster role is K10 admin, and the service count, again, it's our Kasten root. So we'll do that, and that's also created. Last but not least, we want to hook this up to the special permissions for virtual machines, okay? And we'll type that in here, or I'll copy and paste it. So kubectl, kubectl if you like to call it that, or I could have just typed K if I typed it. Create cluster role binding. So this is a cluster role binding, because virtual machines could be in any one of many namespaces. Remember, we created our virtual machine in a namespace called VMs. I created the namespace, called it VMs, and in there we have our one virtual machine. But you might have like 10 or 15 namespaces with different types of virtual machines in there for whatever reason. So you need to have a cluster role binding to a cluster role. And the cluster role is K10 virtual machines admin. So they've differentiated here. There's a K10 admin role, which works for all the Kubernetes deployments, but then there's a special K10 virtual machines admin role. Okay, so again, a differentiation. And this is pretty simple because everything's the same except for the name of that K10 virtual machines cluster role. Okay. So we've got all that now. We should be ready to go. What do we need to do now? We've got a service count. We've connected it to all the necessary role bindings and cluster role bindings, so it'll have access. Now we need to create a token. There's different ways to do this. You can create temporary tokens, okay? Or you can create permanent ones. In the instructions, I'll probably give you both, but for now, I don't want to create temporary ones. I want to create a permanent one because I don't want to do this every 5 seconds. So we'll do that. So first of all, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a environment set in here, and I'm going to call it desired token secret name. Okay. Now you could have just called that something else, but I'm basically saying that the desired token secret name equals Kasten root token. Okay. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to create this token. Okay. And for that, I've got this here. This will be in the instructions. Don't worry about it. The temporary tokens are easier to create. I mean, you could create one for 500 hours, something like that, and it would be almost like a permanent one. But this is just for the permanent one I'm creating. So kubectl apply in the namespace, okay? The file name, and I'm creating this file, right? Creating this file. I could have made this a YAML file, and then did a kubectl apply -f in the file name. But here's another way of doing things with Kubernetes. You can actually write the whole file out, and then end of file, and then it just pipes it in there. So this is a secret. I'm creating the secret, okay? And this is important. And the secret is with the annotation Kasten root. So that's the service account name. Okay, that's very important. This is a type service account token, okay? I know there's a lot of extra new information here, but just think token, and just when you go to the login, it says, right? Paste your bearer token. So that's the key word. So I'm going to push that in there, and it says secret Kasten root token created. So we have our service account we created. We attached it to the necessary permissions by attaching it to either a cluster role, or 2 in our case, and then 1 namespace role. And now we've created a secret which contains the token. So the token is basically there. How do I get it? Well, if I do this, get secrets, and then in the namespace, Kasten, there's a bunch of them, but we'll see the one that I just created, right? You can see it, Kasten root token. That's why it's important to give it a name you're not gonna like miss or make it too similar to the other ones. Like I could have created K10 something token, but then all the default ones are K10, and you might get lost. Kasten root token, I know that's the one I created, and it tells you what it is. But that doesn't tell you anything. Now you can also Kubernetes do this. Do K, not just get, but describe. Okay, describe, and then minus for the namespace Kasten namespace secret. Okay, and then I can actually take this secret. I can just do this. Left click on my mouth, or right click on my mouth. I'm sorry, on my mouse. On my mouth, my mouse. There we go. Oh, you've got to have the right. You have to spell describe. Oh, not K. Get describe. It's Boxing Day, and there you go. Okay. Now, you look at that token. You go, oh, maybe that'll work. I don't think it will. Why? Because it's been encoded. So let's try it. So this is a secret, and this is what it contains. It says a token. Okay. Well, let's try that. Put that in there. And guess what? It did work. Isn't that fantastic? Okay. So I was wrong there. That is the token. I got mixed up because you have to put them in base 64 when you're creating it, I think. Anyways, don't pay attention to me. It's still a day after Christmas, so I'm a little bit whatever. Confused. But just remember, very simple. Do K describe, and it will show you the token. That's one way to get it. There's another way to get it too. You can actually get secret, and then you can pull it out from the JSON, which is even more complicated. We won't go into that. Anyways, that works. I'll be honest with you. I thought the token here was in base 64. So I've obviously gotten something confused. It's a big and complicated subject. But hey, if it works, if this hadn't worked, you could have just piped it into base 64 minus D to decode, okay? No big deal. We're in, so what do we need to do? Put an email address and company, fine, I've done that. Accept the terms, and I'm in there. Free license for the time being, which gives you 5 nodes, okay? So you can't do very much with it. Well, I mean, in a home lab you can. Anyways, we're in, that's fantastic. Who are we in as? Kasten root, okay? Excellent, Kasten root. Very important, can we see virtual machines? Yes, there's our Ubuntu, right? There it is. We can see it, and we can see everything else as well. So, easy enough. Another way to have created the token is you could have created a temporary token, okay? And I'll show you now how to do that. In the instructions, you will have both ways of doing this. So, here's the documentation. Always go back to the documentation to check things out if you get confused. If you look at the authentication, as I was saying before, there's different ways. There's direct access, right? Which there's no RBAC for. Basic authentication, again, no RBAC, so not really what you want. But we've gone, the first one here is token authentication, so we've gotten RBAC. So we can actually create different users and give them different capabilities in here, which is very important. But there's more as well. There's OpenShift, there's OpenShift tokens as well, but there's OAuth, okay, with OpenShift. And let's just go down, see if they've added anything new. I think that's pretty much it. A lot about OpenShift, as you can tell. OpenID Connect, okay? OpenID Connect, which I have done before, using Keycloak. So there's a free authentication setup. You can use Keycloak, and which by default, that's what OpenShift uses under the covers, under the hood, whatever. But you can actually create one yourself. It's not super complicated, but it does require a bit of studying. Anyway, so you can see that's all for that. Let's go back and talk about, though, creating a temporary token. In fact, if you look here, if I go back to the documentation, 1 second, it is up here. If you go to dashboard access, and I'm sorry, authentication. Yeah, I was there. Okay. And then token creation. It's just this command here, and I'll put that in there. The problem is it's temporary, and I didn't want to use it. So, by the way, a little pointer here. When you copy and paste from the Kasten documentation, I don't know why, but they include the shell thing. So if you press that, nothing's going to happen because the dollar sign is not found, obviously. So if you do Control A, it takes you to the beginning, and you can just erase that. Okay. So the only thing I have to change here is the service account. Remember, I called it Kasten root. I'm not going to type this now because I don't want it to overwrite anything. But I could have done Kasten root and then duration. 24 hours, 50 hours, 500 hours. That's quite simple as well. But I'm not going to do that because I've already created my token, permanent token, which came up here in the describe command. Okay, so keep that in mind. Okay, so we have now logged into Kasten, and we can see the virtual machines. If I had any other deployments, they'd be here. And we'll go through this tomorrow, how to set up disaster recovery and how to back up virtual machines. And I'll tell you one thing, I'll give you a hint. You need to go to applications, okay? You need to go to applications, and that's where you'll create your backups. But enough for today. We're making these small during the holidays, so they're easy to digest. And just remember that one thing, that if you do the describe on the token, you actually see the real token. I'll look into that because I was pretty certain. I used to always have to decode the base 64. So the token would be in the, you know what? Before we go, I know what it is. If you do this, I remember now. If you do K get secrets N Kasten root or Kasten, and it's the well, let's get the secrets first. Which one is it? Okay, it's Kasten root token, right? So Kasten root token. Okay, and then do OYAML. Okay, OYAML. It's another way of doing this. You can find the token different ways. Describe seems to be the easiest. But if you do this, you'll get the YAML file. Now in the YAML file, you see the token. But look at that. I can see right away. It didn't start with capital Z, did it? That's base 64 installed, okay? So let's show you how to get this. You don't really need to if you can do describe. But if I do echo, okay, echo, type echo, and then I put this, and then I pipe it into base 64 with a -D for decode. There it is, see? EYJ and ending in PIA. And now to compare it, let's go back and do our describe. See? Exact same one. So that's where you need to decode. If you go and get the YAML and put, so you do K get secret OYAML and the name of the secret, it'll bring out the entire secret, the contents of it, and in there, it's encoded. The token's encoded, in which case you decode. But obviously, you don't need to do that if you've got the K describe. So there you go. Learn something new every day. I don't know how I missed that. Maybe something's changed. Maybe I kind of was decoding all the time, you know? A lot of fun. All right, we'll see you tomorrow, and thank you very much.